What a delightful cloud of witnesses, animated and otherwise. We thank you, puppeteers, for being here. And I want to welcome you on behalf of the family of Tracey Garver Connor, a dear friend of mine, and I'm sure of yours as well. We are thankful that you have come here to help remember her life and the creativity and the exuberance that she brought to life. And I know from her husband and her wishes were that this would be a joyous time. Let me begin with a word of prayer. Dear God, our Father, we come into your presence here to remember a dear friend of ours and of yours. Be with us today as we remember the many things that she has done. In the name of our Savior, amen. We would like to invite you, as you are transitioning to the reception area, to sign the guest register. There are several sheets there, not a book, but there are several sheets that you can sign as you transition. There are a number of individuals who are going to be sharing some events and memories of her life, and they're going to proceed by self-announcing so that I don't keep interrupting. But there are a number here from a variety of walks in life and context. So you're going to meet a variety of people, and I don't think any of us could have imagined where all of her connections were. But we'll just rejoice in that.
Try to capture my breath here. It's amazing to see all the people that loved our Tracey. She was loved everywhere I went, everybody I met. I don't know anyone that had such an atmosphere of love and commitment. And you can tell by the people here that it continues through you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the puppeteers and everyone that's worked so hard. Askell for coming all the way from North Carolina, Reba, our technical crew in the back. This is something I think Tracey would have enjoyed. It's her world, and I just got to visit it. We have family and friends from all over the country. They're in Ohio, they're in Georgia, they're in Arizona, they're in California, they're in North Carolina, and they're watching the stream today, hopefully. And we also have friends in Australia. Good day. And it's actually 3:30 in the morning, Steve told me. So if they're up watching this early, thank you very much. And we have family in Scotland that is also watching it. There are only 4 hours difference, so thank you, family, too. Tracey created Micheli Puppets 38 years ago with her friend Michael Prasniak. Now, Michael couldn't be here today because he's recovering from surgery, but I know he's watching, and I know he's here in spirit. The unique name, Micheli Puppets, comes from Tracey's first name, which is Michelle, and Lee's middle name, Michael's middle name, which is Lee, Michel Lee. So the name stuck. It's kind of like Kodak. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So good job on both of them. As executive director, Tracey would get funding from a variety of organizations and different sources to produce a huge range of effective, engaging, issue-based puppet shows and plays. I'd like to take a couple of minutes here, in case some of you haven't seen some of the work that she does, and see one of my favorite videos, and this had to do with Money Wise Kids. And there were several, and they have different sponsors to do things. And what they did was, they think kids, young kids especially, needed a lot more information about money. And of course they do. So have some fun and watch this little musical treat that Micheli Puppets produced. under Tracey, and I'll be back in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Grab your piggy bank. We're going to the credit union.
Mom, what's a credit union?
You'll see.
Hello and welcome to the credit union today. I'm the manager, Maria. I'll show you the way. For help with your money, you're in the right place. We have everything that you need to put a smile on your face.
We have everything you need to put a smile on your face.
When adults need to purchase a new car or home, a loan officer helps them to get a loan.
That's money we lend them to get what they need. We'll guide them step by step until they have the deed.
We'll guide them step by step until they have the deed.
I have a check to deposit.
I need some quick cash.
Service reps can help you both in a flash. For saving and spending, they'll give you advice. They count all the money to keep it precise.
They count all the money to keep it precise.
So how can we help you?
I don't really know. My piggy bank's full and Mom said let's go.
We can help you with money of any amount. Service reps, let's break down how to set up an account.
First, we start with a conversation. We type in your name and some more information. We count your money to make a deposit, then move it to a vault. It's like a locked money closet.
I'm leaving my money, but what if I need it? At home I have a piggy bank that fills when I feed it. How do I get my money if it's locked in here?
Well, there's many ways to get your money. Have no fear. Just use a debit card to withdraw cash from a machine or come inside and see Service Rep Christine. You can view your account from any device to check on your money.
Now, isn't that nice?
Well, why leave it here? Why not keep it with me? This bank is full. I could get another piggy.
When you put your money in your savings account, we pay you money to increase the amount. Money at home will stay the same, while money in your account will continue to gain.
I just open an account and you pay me?
Yep, and we can keep it safe for free.
So while I'm sitting on my couch?
We're paying you money.
While riding my bike?
We're paying you money.
You're paying me money no matter what I do?
Yes, the more money you deposit, the more we pay you.
Welcome to the credit union, where you earn money every single day.
For your questions, we have answers.
And we are not bad dancers.
We're here for you every step of the way.
I'd like to open an account, please.
Okay, do you think kids would have engaged in this? Do you think they would have enjoyed it? Do you think they would have learned? Of course they did. And that's what Micheli Puppets continually did. And it's a variety of different types of shows and techniques. They meet state deadlines, they write lesson plans, they create whatever is needed. Her staff has always used fun and engaging issue-based puppet shows. And it can be more serious topics than money. It can, for older kids, it deals with some serious topics, which older kids are mature enough to deal with. And they do it through puppetry. For younger kids, it can be bullying, it can be health, but that's what they continually do. And as I said, it's 85 videos they've made so far, and they're continuing to produce videos. Micheli Puppets is very much still alive, still here, and I know for a fact Tracey wanted it to continue. She wanted it to be supported. It was her vision. So please continue to support Micheli Puppets in her mission. Now, we had a discussion before, just talking philosophically, where Tracey was talking about, well, one day I'll retire. And she was 60, and that might have been 5 or 6 years away. And I knew she would never retire. I didn't expect her to go out early, but I knew she'd never retire, and I was okay with that. Being Mr. Tracey was actually a pretty good gig, and I enjoyed it, But Tracey had a lot, everybody was her friend, but she had some close friends. And the thing that was amazing to me was that her best friend was her mother. And she'd come in from work all day, and I'd be there cooking dinner and ready to embrace my wife after being gone all day. She would inevitably be on the phone with Laura, her mom. She loved talking to her mom. It was her best friend. And, they just had this great relationship. I envied. Laura, you did a great job. Now, she lived an exemplary life. Tracey was unselfish, giving, loving, helpful, and caring about life and caring about everybody. As her husband, I can honestly tell you that that's exactly who she was. There was no performance involved with her personality and the work that she did. And there's so much more to say about Tracey, but we have several speakers that are going to be telling you other perspectives about Tracey. And they're all going to be positive, they're all going to be interesting, and they're all going to be better than mine, but that's because I was a husband. She used to tell me we would debate with each other sometimes about a topic, a star we were watching on a TV series or something that we heard on the news. Whatever it was, we did what everybody did, go to Google and see who's right. And invariably, she was right and I was wrong. And she would say, "Why do you even try, Leonard? You know I got this." I said, "All right." But I hope I can just get this out as I wrap this up, because thank you, Tracey, for making the world a better place for children, teens, young adults, and special needs students. That was her driving force. It never stopped for 38 years, and I just admired her more than any person I had ever met. Even before she was my wife. She was just the most amazing personality. Little Tracey, she was powerful, she was determined, she had a vision, and she stayed positive the whole time. Thank you, Tracey, and thank all of you for loving our Tracey.
When I was 18 years old and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I sat down with my dad and I said, "Daddy, I can't figure it out. I want to do all these things." And he said, "Baby, I got one piece of advice for you, and only one piece of advice for you. Find a job you would do for free, and you will never work a day in your life." He was right. Fast forward 28 years, and I find this ad in a newspaper that says, "Mature person wanted for diversity training." And I looked at my husband and I said, "I bet it's that company I've been trying to find out about." And he said, "Denise, you're nuts. What makes you think that ad is that company?" I said, "Divine intervention." I called the number, and it was Tracey. And I told her I read this tiny little ad, and she said, "Yes, I am looking for somebody, and if you'd like to come to an audition, it's going to be this coming Friday afternoon. It's going to be at our studio. There will be 10 people auditioning." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I'm thinking, we're going to sit down and one at a time go in. I walk in the room, and there is a table loaded with puppets, and there are other people there. And she said, "Everybody pick up a puppet and just play. Have fun." Well, the puppet that I picked up was blind. I didn't realize that the stars were not really eyes, but lack of eyes. And I decided to just have a good time. So I'm bouncing around the floor like a bunny rabbit with my little puppet, and I'm having a ball. I couldn't have cared less about everybody else. I already figured I wasn't going to get the job. So when it was over, Tracey is talking to people, the other people, and she is telling them, you know, please, I'll be calling you in a couple of days. Let me know if you're available, and we'll talk further. Okay. And then she said, Denise, come here. And I said, yes. And she said, you're not right for this show that I'm casting for. And I thought, oh, that's it. I knew it. And she goes, but you are right for another show that we do called Kids on the Block. And it turns out that one of our puppeteers is leaving, and we need somebody to take her place. Would you be interested? And I said yes. And that introduction to puppetry lasted 10 years with my partner, Mary Young. And then Tracey asked me if I would like to come into the office and start working in the office, still doing other puppet shows, but not doing that one. And I said, of course, I'd love to. And I ended up in the office, and as time went on, I ended up taking care of a number of different things in the office until we moved. And when we moved into our building that the Edith Bush Foundation graciously got us into, Tracey told me, I'm switching your job. You are now going to solely be doing booking, communications, and marketing. And again, my dad was right. I have never worked a day in my life, and it has been a blessing. Working for Tracey was in the morning, we would meet for 15 minutes and have coffee. I no longer have that anymore. Every single day for the last 28 years has been filled with absolute joy. And I have loved going to work every single day. And I feel bad for people who have jobs that they can't wait till they retire or they can't wait till vacation comes, because every single day that I spent with Tracey was pure joy. We would sit, we would talk, I would tell her about my life problems, she would tell me about puppet problems. We got to know each other so well that she knew more about me than my own sister did. And she would scold me on occasion when I did things that she thought I should not do. And she would give me hugs when I did something that was more than right. She will be sorely missed. There is never going to be another person like her. Try as our board may, it is going to be hard to replace her. She is irreplaceable. She is the kind of person that you meet once in a lifetime. And I was lucky enough to be with her for 28 years on a daily basis. She's been so involved in my family. She knows everybody, and I know her family. They are like my own, and I am blessed, double blessed because of that. For those of you who have lost your dear friend Tracey, you have my condolences, because my heart hurts just as bad. But I haven't been able to grieve yet, because every time I start, I hear this little voice from this little blonde woman in my head saying, Dee, we do not have time for this. We have a deadline to meet. We will deal with emotions later. So I'm expecting that anytime after this, I may be able to get going on it, and it isn't going to be pretty. But I'd like to tell all of you, if you feel it in your heart, if you feel her there, acknowledge her, talk to her, let her know how you're doing, because I talk to her every morning. Even though we can't have a cup of coffee, she's still there. I'm still talking to her, and she's still my guiding light. I thank every single one of you for the effect you had on her, the kind of woman you allowed her to be, the kind of woman that was giving and kind and loving and understanding. Because of you, That's the kind of person you helped create. She was definitely one of a kind, and each one of us is truly blessed. Thank you.
My name is Karen Wilcox, and I'm a member of this church, the Apopka Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I'm also boys and girls in our church, and it's to help equip them with different skill sets, with different life experiences, so that they can have service opportunities and learning skills to share Jesus with others. And Tracey was very involved with the Pathfinders. She went to a leadership summit and helped teach the leaders about puppetry. She worked with the Pathfinders themselves. They did sock puppets. And in Pathfinders, you would wear a sash as you would learn different skills. Like if you learned about how to tie knots, you could get a knot honor. If you learned how to build a campfire, you could get it. So you would get a sash with these different honors. And I was told by the Pathfinder leader that it just utterly delighted them because Tracey helped them make sashes for their sock puppets, and the kids just had a ball doing that with her. Tracey was also here in our church, wanted to be involved in our worship coordination. And what that means is she actually met with a team, and she would meet with them and they would talk and listen to different ideas. And I talked with one of the participants in her committee, and she said, Karen, she was the type of leader. She never rushed. She would listen to all the different ideas. She would allow people to share those, and then creatively, they would come up with suggestions. I was told that it was Tracey's idea to have a special Sabbath every quarter that was called the Heart of Worship. And it was really for a time for singing, for people to share prayers and special testimonies. And what was so special is this lady from this committee actually sent me one of the announcements that she had kept. And she said how much she misses Tracey in this role. Tracey shared her director skills here in our church. We had amazing Easter programs, Christmas programs, and she would rehearse with the participants. She would coach them with their lines. And it was just always so special because they were just beautiful enactments from the Bible and drew everyone together. A comment made to me by the Pathfinder leader was, Tracey was a light to the world. She was a beacon. I had another friend from church share with me, Tracey took time. She listened to me, never felt rushed, and made me feel like I was important and that she enjoyed time spent with me. And then I had a friend who sent this and asked if I would read this. And this is from a young lady named Tanya who lives in Maine. And I thought it just told a compelling story that I wanted to read this, and I want to make sure I don't miss what Tanya wrote. Tracey did so much good, Tanya writes, for the community. Micheli Puppets helped so many kids, often kids who would have never been exposed to art or to theater. She was truly a person who lived as Jesus did, loving the unlovable, those society had labeled bad, and especially those that were easy to marginalize. She poured love out and helped you to see the good in yourself. She was small, but few people had a bigger love for God and his children, making sure they each knew he had forgiven them and they were still lovable. You see, Tanya knew this personally because she next writes, Tracey wrote to me faithfully while I was in jail and continued to reach out to me and to pray for me. When I got out of jail, Tracey was at every court hearing and wrote to the judge. She would stop in the church office when I worked there just to say hi and to ask how things were going. And I remember her smile when I was able to talk to her about my daughter, Katie, and how she prayed a most beautiful prayer of thanks as my relationship with her grew. Tracey Garver Connor and Tracy Smith were two ladies that were amazing, awesome prayer warriors in my life. You truly felt the power of prayer when you were praying with them. When they laid hands upon you and prayed, you knew God was there. I know I haven't gotten to speak to Tracey for a few years, but every time we saw each other again, it was quick to catch up, and then like we had just seen each other, and no time had passed. That's how I think it will be when we're reunited with Tracey in heaven. And now I would like to just take a few moments to share about my friendship personally with Tracey. We often sat together in church, enjoying her little sister, Rebecca, who Tracey often had with her on Sabbaths. Tracey was so funny. When we were having choir, Tracey always would be like, Karen, let me come stand beside you, and so we could sing alto together. So we always stood side by side whenever we were singing. But Tracey had this amazing ability, as so many of you know, about coaching. And so when she had a play or if I was participating, she was my coach. And she helped me so much with intonation and with when to pause. And it was just amazing, her skills in bringing things to life. Tracey and I had a special tradition. On our birthdays, we always met together for breakfast, and we would bring each other a gift. And as I reflected through the years, one gift that really has stood out to me because I had never received this gift before, but she gave me a bird feeder with bird seed. I thought it was the most extraordinary gift, and since that time, I have always kept a bird feeder out in my backyard because Tracey loved nature. One of the most favorite things when I would come over to visit with Tracey and Leonard in their home was, let's just go sit out on the back porch, sit in the rockers, and we would talk about nature and the things that they had seen around their home. She loved that. Tracey and I also came up with this idea, and I don't know where it came from, but she was my partner in this. We decided it would be so neat to meet with some of our senior ladies, one or two of them at a time, and take them to dinner. We were like, let's just take them and learn from them. They have years of wisdom. So there was a restaurant here in Altamont called Sweet Tomatoes. We loved it. It was all kinds of soups and salad, and that's where we always went. And we would take a senior lady, one or two, and Tracey and I would go and just sit and ask questions and learn from these more senior ladies, and it was just so delightful. Tracey and I spoke 24 hours before she went to the hospital for her last procedure, because we had talked a lot about what the procedure was going to be. My background, I am a nurse as well. And she was like, Karen, I want you to know, she said, I'm completely at peace with God, and everything's okay. My life has been enriched and blessed by my dear friend Tracey. You know, they say it's not what you gather, but what you scatter that tells what kind of life you have lived. And Tracey loved the Bible. She so loved God. And there's a verse that I think exemplifies Tracey Garver Connor that says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Matthew 5:16. I think it's well stated to say that Tracey was a light and that she wanted her light to shine and that God be glorified. And I think she was highly successful.
My name is David, and I'm a puppeteer. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's a different meeting. That is not why we're here. Leonard asked me to say a few words, and my friend Becky said a few words, because people know that I could go on, and hopefully I can get through this. Tracey was my boss, my mentor, my director, my coworker. She's my friend, and I love her. I met her early in 2010 when she traveled to South Florida to audition puppeteers for the Extreme Health Challenge Tour. I was over 50 years old and had never worked as a professional puppeteer. There had been an economic downturn, and my day job as a manager in an IT department was gone, just like that. And so, of course, I decided to be a puppeteer. When I got the call that I was hired, I thought, nailed it! I later learned that I beat out a guy whose reason for applying was that he thought it would be a fun way to get close to children. So, in any case, I may have used a soliloquy from the play Harvey as part of my audition. And there's a line that goes, "We have entered as strangers. Soon we have friends." The puppet community is like that. On March 7, 2010, I arrived in Orlando to start rehearsing. On March 15th, I started touring, and I worked with that show on and off through 2017. I'm ever grateful for the opportunity she provided. I don't think I've ever met an individual so full of life, so focused, so able, so determined to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Tracey was a gifted puppeteer, and her animus lit up any room or stage that she entered. And now, even though she's exited, I feel she's just around the corner, participating in whatever comes next. Godspeed.
Hello. Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate such an incredible person, Tracey Connor. For those of you who don't know me, my name is RJ Manchester, and I worked with Tracey for about a decade, serving on Micheli Puppets' board of directors. Tracey was a good friend and mentor. She was kind and very concerned about the well-being of others. I remember how Tracey would regularly check in with me to see how my family and I were doing in a way to let me know she truly cared. I learned so much from Tracey about puppetry and how you can use absolutely anything as a puppet. Tracey could bring any object to life and give it a story with a meaningful message. Tracey also understood that puppets could communicate complex messages and help kids see a path beyond what they were struggling with. She dedicated her life to creating experiences that would be empowering for kids and help them in meaningful ways. Tracey was able to connect puppets with kids around trauma in ways that made such significant impacts that many of Micheli Puppets shows have a counselor present to help kids who are personally affected by the material process what they're learning. In Tracey's caring nature, she was deeply moved by suffering near and far. I remember when Puerto Rico was devastated by a hurricane and refugees were relocated to Kissimmee. Tracey's first response was to create a bilingual puppet show about being in a new place. That was her way of caring for the entire community. Tracey provided the world with empowering and healing messages through puppetry. Tracey was selfless in her work, and I know she made many personal sacrifices to support the mission of Micheli Puppets. I remember Tracey consistently putting the company before herself and working long hours to develop shows, find funding, hire performers, deal with the board, and everything else it takes to run a business. Tracey was the most dedicated person I know. She made the impossible possible every day. As busy as Tracey was, she always made time to chat about life and struggles and could make anything better with puppet hugs. I believe that everyone who met Tracey or who experienced her work was forever changed for the better. Tracey was such a positive presence in the world that this truly is a loss for everyone. It is with a heavy heart that I celebrate and say goodbye to my friend, Tracey Connor. Thank you.
Having trouble talking. I promised myself I'd get through this though, so here we go. I'm Becky Lane, and we've talked a lot about how Tracey created a welcoming environment for children and for humans and for those in need. She created an excellent environment for artists as well. So, Tracey became a core mentor in my life. I worked for Micheli for 7 consecutive years, which is essentially a lifetime. She saw something in me worth investing in at a time when I needed somebody to believe in my potential. And she gave me the space to be creative, and she gave a space for my creative efforts to be included in a final product. Tracey was the first person to cast me. After I graduated college, I had earned a BFA in acting, and my parents strongly encouraged me to find a job with a living wage and with health insurance. And I wasn't getting hired by the parks. So Tracey offered me a year-round, full-time job with benefits. She offered to teach me puppetry, because I had been an actor. And with Micheli Puppets, I found the freedom to hone my acting craft, to explore other aspects of production, almost every other aspect. Tracey allowed me to write scripts, to write songs, to teach workshops, to build puppets. She taught me how to book shows. She put me through a training program so that I could write grants. She taught me how to workshop original theater. how to tour, how to set up gear, how to partner with non-arts collaborators. She taught me how to make videos. And so many of these skills, I came in with a foundation, but Tracey gave me the space to explore things I had no training in. And she gave me the opportunity to learn the craft of these things. She had created a true ensemble theater company in which the members of the company had the option, the opportunity to take on other creative and production jobs as they felt curious. Those of you in the performing industry will know that this was a unicorn job. And I was not the only person that she hired like this. So Tracey didn't just teach me puppetry. She challenged herself to work with a new form of puppetry every year. And she brought all of us with her on that journey. We built shows using Bunraku puppets, shadow puppets, arm and rod puppets, you name it. We tried it and we learned it together. She brought me not only into the craft of puppetry, she brought me into the community. Puppetry is something that there are limited programs where you can go and learn puppetry. It still is an apprentice art. And so she paid back to the puppetry community by bringing those that she employed into that world. She brought us to the regional festivals. She brought us to the national festivals where we took workshops, where we met people, where we made friends, where we got to see work that was happening on a national and sometimes international level. That's huge. She introduced me to people with whom I still work today. So Tracey raised my artist self. She brought me into the incredible, quirky world of puppetry, and she gave me the tools and connections to continue to explore it on my own. She gave me a model for what it looks like to make a living, developing and producing original theater. It is because of Tracey that I pursued my MFA in theater. I expanded my professional circle from the world of puppetry to the very large world of experimental avant-garde theater. Those of you who know avant-garde theater, you know that that step was boop. And it's because of what I learned from her that I have found my way into arts leadership as the director of the School of Arts and Entertainment at Valencia College. But I wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for what I learned from Tracey and what I learned from working with Micheli Puppets and the community that Tracey brought together. And even after I moved away from Micheli, Tracey still stayed in my life. She delighted. Oh. She delighted in hearing about my projects and my journeys beyond. She supported me by listening, by sharing resources, by offering advice, by coming to see my work. I am who I am as a professional and as a creative in great part due to Micheli Puppets, and Tracey Connor was at the heart of that experience. I am so thankful that Tracey allowed me to be in her life. And I am so thankful for the fact that she brought me into this incredible community. And like Denise, I talk to her every day. Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to take a moment to talk to you a little bit about my friend Tracey Connor. She was somebody that I had a great admiration for. The few things that we were able to do together over the last 4.5 years or so, I saw someone who truly cared about her church and who truly cared about people. One of the things I noticed through the years is how much she cared about children. I can remember during the pandemic, or shortly thereafter, I had to go to an electronics shop down in Orlando. And I took my son with me, and we took some equipment that they weren't able to even fix. But when we got to the shop, I realized that Tracey's shop, Micheli Puppets, was in the same complex as this electronics shop. And so I said to my son, "Hey, Aiden, let's go over and check this out for a minute. I want you to see this." Because I had been able to take a tour of the studio once before. And we went over to the shop, and sure enough, Tracey was there. And generally speaking, I would think that you would have to make an appointment at something like this, but she came right out. She greeted us. She was happy to see us. At the time, I remember we were careful and made sure, we had a mask on and made sure that we had a little bit of distance, but we were just very delighted to see her, and we felt like she was delighted to see us, actually. That's how she treated us. And she brought us in. She took us on a tour of the studio, and she told us about the things that she was involved in and what Micheli Puppets was really about. I was drawn to a text just thinking about Tracey and what that meant to her. And I know that Tracey was more than just that business, but I know that was what she was passionate about. And there was a text I was drawn to, and it's one that I've read at a lot of memorial services over the years. It's Revelation 21, where it says, "I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, 'Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever.'" Why did I think about that? Well, I remember when Tracey told me what her business was all about and the kinds of things that she did. She would use this vast array of puppets. I mean, I know there's a better name for it than that, but she would use all of these characters on television or in person in classes and schools and all these different places to help children feel better about themselves, about situations they were going through, help them to be able to process things like death and hospitalizations and just things that were going on in the world around children that are hard for children to understand and to process. And she would use that ministry, and I know she thought of it as a ministry, to try and help wipe away the tears from the eyes of children. And I so admired her for that. I was able to visit her a couple of times over the last few months of her life while she was in the hospital. And she was in various degrees of alertness, but I won't forget telling her about the stage in our new worship center. I won't forget telling her how much she could have done on that stage, that she could do on that stage. I told her about, because she was into productions and she was into things that she would have loved doing on our stage. But I told her about when we had a whole gymnastics team doing 3 highs in a skit on our stage in our new worship center. And I remember that she couldn't talk, but she smiled at that moment. And I just felt like there was a connection there that she made that made her happy. And I know what made her happy was helping children, wiping the tears from their eyes, helping them understand the world around them and be able to process the world around them, including the things that are really hard. I will always remember Tracey. I will always admire her. I'm praying for her family. Leonard, I'm praying for you. And I know that the Lord will be with you. And ultimately, the joy and the hope that I do have in all of these kinds of situations is that we have a God that's going to wipe away every tear from our eyes. God bless you.
Good afternoon. I'm David Odahowski, President, CEO, and Trustee of the Edith Bush Charitable Foundation. Tracey Connor's the reason I came to Florida. Tracey Connor is the reason the foundation has a special relationship with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, America's largest healthcare funder. Tracey Connors was an educator, a puppeteer, and an entrepreneur. Tracey Connor was an arts innovator, and as you heard, a mentor to others. She was a successful grantee of the foundation and a cherished and personal friend. And if she didn't invent the puppet hug, she surely perfected it. It was October of 1990, and the second president of the Edith Bush Charitable Foundation, Clifford Lee, was trying to close the deal for my acceptance of the board's offer to come and lead the Edith Bush Charitable Foundation from Minneapolis, St. Paul. And Cliff was describing the opportunities and the ground floor vibrancy of an inspiring and growing Orlando and the good works of nonprofit organizations in human service, education, healthcare, and the arts. He was excited to tell me about Micheli Puppets and its founder, Tracey Connor. Tracey and Micheli had been identified by and endorsed by us, to us, by the concluding speaker, Mr. Tom Yoakum. Cliff made the first grant that the foundation had to Micheli Puppets earlier in 1990. It was for $21,500 and a dollar-for-dollar match to purchase 17 puppets and a van to take them all around where they needed to be. It would be the first of 18 grants totaling over $675,000. Now, the foundation was very familiar with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation because we had done work with Shepherd's Hope and the Healthcare Center for the Homeless, which is now known as the Orange Blossom Clinic. But there was something special, and Robert Wood Johnson wanted to know what that was. And the first attempt that Tracey made didn't meet with success, but they knew there was something special there, so they issued her a $50,000 planning grant to shape it up and to put it into, and to think about what she was going to be doing with this extreme health challenge program. The next year she applied. She got a very significant grant. It was multi-year. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because Tracey was that special educator and puppeteer and entrepreneur, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation continued to engage her for their special projects and to do consulting when their program, which was called the Local Initiative Funding Partners, was concluding after 25 years. They wanted to be sure that Tracey was included in the history of that program. what I can say is that, you know, the best way that I think that we can honor Tracey is to be well, to take good care of ourselves, to do good works out in the community, and to be sure to hand out lots of those puppet hugs. Thank you.
Say you want to get some education about a tough subject to students. Who are you going to call? Tracey's Puppets. Say you want to spice up an opera that has animals in it. Who are you going to call? Tracey's Puppets. Say you've got some puppets that you're putting in a parade and you need someone to organize it and keep it together. Who are you going to call? Tracey's Puppets. Say you want to make even bigger puppets, something big that will really attract somebody. Who are you going to call? Tracey's Puppets. So I'm Terry Olson. I'm with Orange County Arts and Cultural Affairs. And probably in the 90s, I first went to one of those school performances about some issue and met this neat, petite, very sweet woman, and kept in track of what was going on during the years. I went to an opera that was incredible with the puppets that made it all come alive. And then we created Fusion Fest, the celebration of the many heritages we have here and the creativity that comes from learning about each other's cultures. And part of that was wanting to show those cultures and having parades. And so different people were making some of the puppets for us. Davey Wavy over there, I talked to first about that, and we got some different artists to make puppets, but I needed somebody to know what to do with them. I wasn't a puppeteer. So Tracey was like, yeah, I'll take it. Okay, we'll organize this and get people together, and she organized that. And then finally, last year, she organized a community puppet build where we built 3 large puppets like this one, which is actually on its knees. It's much taller than this, and 2 others. And so I'm imagining right now, let's just say Peter and Gabriel are talking about some issue they want to bring to the heavenly community, and all of a sudden they say, who are you going to call? Tracey's Puppets.
A beautiful soul, always had a smile on her face. So kind and so sweet to everyone that she met. Brilliant, a terrific person, and an amazing dancer. These are the quotes that we saw when we posted Tracey's passing on the PHS, Pickerington High School memorial page. People who have known her for 45 years still remembered her in that way. I laughed when Denise said something about along the lines of, we don't have time for that. Before there was we don't have time for that was the look. You always got the look first. When she had just about enough, you got the then you knew you were about to get the dressing down of how it was going to go from that point forward. And she was always right. Let's go with that there. So Tracey was well loved in high school. She was an honor attendant her sophomore year. She was in the top 10 of her class, and she was an amazing dancer. And so one of those things come to mind because during their senior show, each year the band got a chance to put together the senior show, right? So the seniors would get together and figure out what they were going to do. Well, that particular year, the band had changed their costumes, and the girls weren't exactly excited about them. The color guard was less than thrilled with the new look that they had to put together. So for their senior show, they had arranged to do a little shift during a particular portion and do a costume change on the stage real time. Well, that worked out really well because some of the twirlers were doing fire, so the lights went out. And during the lights being out, the quick change happened. And realize, setting you up, this was the late 70s, early 80s, so when the lights popped back on, they were in their purple sequin bodysuits and white patent leather go-go boots for the number and danced to Long Train Running. Crowd came to their feet, they went absolutely nuts. And so there was always that little piece of Tracey that was willing to push the envelope, to make something better, to challenge the status quo. And that's what we most remember about her. So when I think about what she brought to me, I had the opportunity where before I left school, I was living literally across the street from Tracey. And Tracey's window faced my bedroom window, so we talked through the screens oftentimes, much to the chagrin of my aunt who I was living with and her mother, Laura. In fact, often you heard bed now from one of them as we got into trouble. So as I was asking, around more information around Tracey, as far as like after high school, college, a couple stories came up that were rather made me smile. I guess due to her diminutive size, that it was very windy at Bowling Green, and in that day and age, they wore parkas that went basically all the way to the floor. They were the big down coats and whatnot. Well, Tracey often had to have her sisters, her big sister, Jane Maurer, and her little sister, Lisa Segal, actually stand side by side and help drag her across the campus, because if not, a good gust of wind would just pick her up in her coat and blow her down like a tumbleweed. So one of the things that, as we talk to them, I have to say that to them, to Tracey, in love, AOT. For those who are watching from the sorority, they know what that means. I was told I wasn't allowed to know, or it would mean penalty of death, so I did not ask. Also, I would add the quotes that came from those folks were just as vivid as the ones from high school. Never met a woman who was more giving, a more giving soul. She turned all of that love into something so giving and so focused, and that is her legacy. So when I look back and I think of the friendship that existed for over 45 years, and that every 5 years that group got together to celebrate that friendship, this would have been that year. So we are here, several of us, to celebrate her today. And we are thankful to be so blessed to have been asked to be part of this. So to all of you, I would say, we are just as blessed as you were to have had her in our lives, and we look forward, my sweet girl, to seeing you again.
Hello, my name is Roderick Blackman, no pun intended. You can laugh at that, it's okay. I am a puppeteer. I was hired as a puppeteer, Micheli Puppets with Tracey, onto her show for Mission Stay Impossible, where I, as you saw, was with a little boy named Marcus that was in a wheelchair who had osteogenesis imperfecta. I've been with the company present day till now and have moved into working as a creative writer and show director to produce one of the newest shows that we've presented, African Tales Masomo Makubwa, which means great lessons. I was away in Europe just a week ago, and of course, Leonard reached out to me and asked, could I read a personal message that I had sent to her days before I found out? And I've said, of course, and there are not enough words that could tell you how much Tracey meant to me, but I hope these words sit with you and show you what she truly meant to me. Dear Tracey, I wanted to come by and tell you how much I appreciate you and I love you. You're an inspiration to so many of us who look up to you for leadership, guidance, understanding, and empathy. Your fight has made me push harder for the things that I want and love in life, and I'm so blessed that you've chosen me to be a part of your life in some form or fashion. Thank you for being a pillar for the communities that have needed you the most and bringing so much joy to young boys and girls' faces who look just like me. Tracey was known to going to underserved schools, to Black and brown schools, and presenting these shows for people who looked just like me. Your fight will never be over, and Micheli's fight has just begun. I will continue to uplift your name and your company's name as long as I have breath in my body. My heart is with you and Leonard forever. You are always my light, my laughter, my mentor, my second mom, and my family. Thank you.
Tracey always said, if you don't have it memorized, read it. But also have it memorized. So let's make sure I'm staying on target. My name is Jamie Donmoyer. I was a producing director at Micheli Puppets for 7 years. Prior to that, I did everything from workshops to shows and all of that kind of stuff, and we got to create some really amazing things together. Tracey was a giant in a tiny package. I met her at a Puppet Guild meeting when I was 18 and had just moved to Florida. She stuck out as someone I needed to know. Over the years, we'd meet for lunch, and she became a mentor and a friend, eventually recruiting me to Micheli Puppets. That's when I realized how different Tracey's, how different we were, but how alike we were as well. And there were tons of different Traceys as I got to work with her more closely. There was the wise Tracey, who I had known over the years. As a recovering workaholic myself, I really appreciated when Tracey said, I embrace the Sabbath because otherwise I'd work all the time. Which is true. She was there Sunday through Friday until sundown, then she'd take her break, and then she'd come back on Sunday and start all over again. And even on vacations, I would get emails and I would say, oh, how's the beach? She's like, it's fine, but I'm gonna finish my grant. So that was very funny. And then of course, when we would be in a meeting, you know, she didn't wanna tell the people right away, yes, we're gonna do this, we're gonna sign this contract. So she would say, I'll get back to you. And she would set a date of when she would get back to them, and she always followed up. She also said, I just never understand how adults can feel like they're in trouble. And that was very significant to me because I had childhood trauma and always felt like I was in trouble. And as soon as she said that, it clicked. When someone started to gossip, she'd say, I'm not interested in talking about that. And she was a fierce defender of her friends, the people that she cared about. Once we had an issue brought up about an employee, and I brought it to Tracey, and she got angry, and she said, I know about that rumor, and it isn't true. They're talking about someone I care about, and I feel defensive for them. She also said, I'm never offended when people don't donate to Micheli Puppets. I strongly believe that people should donate their money to what they believe in. Every time we've encountered challenges, we've pivoted. That was about Micheli Puppets. You know, they started as a disability awareness show, and then they grew into original programming, videos, things of that nature. And so she's like, that's how we survived since 1985, was by pivoting. And she mentored me in writing grants. I'd written small grants before, but I wrote a major grant, and she was like, you should be the one to push the button to send. And when I got the grant a second time, she said, the first time she said, they want to know what the return on their investment is, talk about the measurable outcomes, talk about the impact, why it's important. When I was awarded the grant a second time, she said, that's because you developed a relationship with them. You kept them informed, you built trust. And that's what Tracey did with everybody. She built trust. You knew if she said she was going to be there, she was going to be there. And for auditions, we might have enough performers, but she'd say, we owe it to ourselves to see who's out there. She'd ask auditioners, what do you know about Micheli Puppets? And she expected them to have an answer because, as she'd say, why would you apply to a company you know nothing about? She'd tell new hires, when you go into a school, you are representing me. She had expectations about behavior, performance, and presentation that were non-negotiable. And when I told her puppeteers were nervous that she was coming to see a show, she said, I don't understand how somebody could be afraid of little me. And I said, they're not afraid of you. They admire you so much that they're afraid to let you down. And I hope to be that kind of person. And of course, all the little Traceys. There was business Tracey who asked pointed questions like, how do you plan to accomplish that? She was tenacious. She built an army of fierce Micheli Puppets advocates throughout Central Florida. I'd go to a random event and somebody would stand up and say, what about Micheli Puppets? And people actually offered their services in exchange for having weekly lunches with Tracey. She developed individual relationships with everyone. And I have a couple of photos that I brought as well, if you're able to bring them up. So of course, Tracey was always being recognized, for different things. That really wasn't that important to her personal recognition. It was more about what was good for Micheli Puppets, right? What was good for the kids, what was gonna help. You can go to the next one, thank you. And these were some times that we got to spend together performing. And it was always a great time because she didn't get to perform very much anymore. And when we did, it was like giggle fest. We would start improvising and, she would get a little blue with her puppets and be very funny about things that you wouldn't have expected to come out of her mouth. You can keep going. And one of the places that she really shined in her business mind and where she really had fun was in the lobby of Micheli Puppets, because that was where we have our puppets on display. And she was really proud of some of the things that she had accomplished, like going to Zambia to teach people hygiene, and a domestic violence awareness show that had a little boy report about his sisters being abused by their stepfather all the way up in, I believe, New England. And I mean, look at the joy on her face. She's just talking about Micheli Puppets. She really loved what Micheli Puppets accomplished. You can keep going. And RJ mentioned this show. This is the thing about Tracey. She had incredible empathy. Sometimes she would just come and we would be having conversation and she would just close her eyes and go, oh, my heart goes out to these people. We had a huge influx of children come from Puerto Rico after the hurricanes, and we would go to the immunization events and we would just give out sock puppets. And the kids would be so excited, and even though we didn't speak the same language, it did not matter. We had the puppet to, as Tracey would say, build a bridge of friendship. You can keep going. And then, just having fun, making things and doing things, you can keep going. And then, of course, there's fun Tracey. Even when you're surrounded by puppets and running a nonprofit, it can still be stressful to run a nonprofit. And I was always happy when business Tracey was usurped by fun Tracey. She would, something would happen and she would hold onto the table and lean back and go, oh my gosh. And she would laugh. And I can't think of one of the things that we were laughing about because it just seemed to happen so often. Our favorite group, both of us, was Queen. And she said, I want to buy you a ticket when Bohemian Rhapsody came out. And we went to the theater and we watched the movie and we stood up at the end and we danced and we sang. She would always tell me what was on the latest menu at Seasons 52, which was also both of our favorite restaurants. And then she would talk about how sometimes Leonard will just play the guitar and we'll sing. I thought that was beautiful. Of course, there was the day she came in, and Tracey was usually at her desk, and she was typing and doing her grants and things like that. But this day she came in, and she was on her phone, which was very rare. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, my butterflies, they're about to hatch. She's like, I gotta call Leonard. All day. waiting for the chrysalises to open. Are they here yet? Are they, like an expectant mother. And she had a very sharp mind. This, maybe you don't know this about her. Yes, you know she had a sharp mind, but she called herself a techie, and if anybody who had any audiovisual experience came in, she would like salivate, and she would be like, ooh, and she'd talk about the 1/8-inch cable or the HDMI and all these things, and she'd be like, ooh, she wanted to know all of those pieces of information, and I'd just be like, is it the skinny one or the one with the prongs? Like, I did not speak that language. After the fundraiser every year, she had a procedure of setting up a table and opening up all the envelopes with joy and writing those thank you notes that she loved to do to make sure that everyone knew how much she appreciated them giving to Micheli Puppets. And one of her big joys was also partnering with other arts organizations. That was where she would get really excited. Secret River with the opera, she was like, oh, you would be so proud of what we did with the opera. And one time we partnered with a dance company, and the dance company was over 6 feet tall, and Tracey ran to him when he came through the door and jumped up, and he hugged her and swung her around. It was amazing. That's when she would really get into things, like what Terry Olson was saying. And then, the day when Sam and Julie showed up and they were donating socks, and Sam had taught himself Chinese that was written on the package. We just loved that. We would talk about it all the time. He made his own Puppet Palooza, which is a little dog, and it just was just so heartwarming. And that's Sam and Julie were what led Tracey to what brought her the most joy, I think, at Micheli Puppets, which was her puppetry explorations for students with unique abilities. You can keep going. There, she's very happy. Look, we were on a bus. You can keep going.
I have so much fun working with these students. I have so much fun working with these students. They have so much joy. They just come alive, and just being around them gives me joy. So it's like the highlight of my week when I get to teach these classes.
Remember when we were just using our legs and we were moving the water? You can use your hand to move the leg. So that's how you're going to stir up the water. So Arlene, use your hand. There you go. And pretend like this leg is in the water, and you're just going to move it back and forth, just like we did just now. Right, and left, and right, and left. Now step to the right, step to the right, step to the right, step to the right, step to the left, step to the left, step left, step left. Okay, let's just freestyle it. How crazy can you be? Really? Ah, good job.
So this was a great joy for her. That she loved this picture of her with the bird. I walked in and she was giggling. She was flying the bird all around, and I just started snapping pictures of it. And it was just such a fun day. She would say, you wouldn't believe the creations that these people are making. She just loved it. She moved it online when we hit the pandemic. And it was just really one of the joys of her life was that program. You can go to the next one, please. So it just shows a little bit of, how she would just get really hands-on with everything. You can go to the next one. Just a little more. And the next one.
I think that's one of the special things about puppets, Kuko, is that kids and even adults can talk to puppets and say things that they might not talk about with a human.
And I think that's true. Well, that was a special day because Astrid and I got to improv a lot on the camera. And Tracey said some things with Astrid that I was really surprised about. But we laughed really hard about it, like really, really hard. And I know right now things might be a little confusing for people. I think Tracey would want you to know that there are no bad emotions. If you're angry, if you're sad, if you're confused, that's okay. You can feel however you need to feel. That's what we want people to know from Micheli Puppets. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Yoakum. You'll be happy to know I'm the cleanup batter. And particularly for little Joe, I see he's gone outside. Always love to see the kids, because if you think about Tracey, you have to think about who she was and how she was about the children much of the time. It's an honor to be here today and talk about Tracey. And my heartfelt condolences go to her family, to everyone involved with Tracey, and of course to Tracey's mother. I will have to tell you, I don't think you may really know the joy that Tracey brought to this community, and of course her love of theater and puppetry, because that was how I began to know Tracey. Hundreds of thousands of children have been introduced by theater from Tracey and from Micheli Puppets. To Leonard, her husband, who related to me how the light of his life went out when Tracey passed, I can only offer Leonard my condolences and let you know her soul is lighting up the children of heaven. Leonard reminded me that after his proposal to Tracey 20+ years ago, she said, no problem, I'm going to Africa for a month, and when I get back, I'll let you know. Wow. More than 30 years ago, the fellow that worked with me in the bank, who worked in our marketing and department, said, Tom, I really want you to meet Tracey Connor, and she wants to talk to you about Micheli Puppets. Puppets? I said, okay, Scott, not a problem. And so we talked very briefly, and Tracey said, would you consider a contribution to Micheli Puppets? And I said, well, what is it you do? And she gave me a brief update, and I said, what's the return? No, I didn't say that. She probably thought I would as a banker. And she asked for $500. Now, this is over 30 years ago. Can you imagine? And of course, we granted Tracey the money for Micheli Puppets. And she went on with this engaging smile. And as you've already heard today, Tracey was one of those people that if you turned her sideways to the wind, you'd lose her, because you wouldn't be able to see her. And then it didn't take long, of course, with David Odahowski and the Edith Bush Foundation involved with Tracey and Micheli Puppets. And there was it was all about the community and helping children. Then there was something about we need a van to haul the puppets. And so these things happen from time to time. We had to take one back from somebody we loaned them money for, and it seemed like the right thing to do. We just gave it to Tracey. Yeah. And 30 years later, 250,000 miles later, that poor van finally gasped and gave it up for the day. And so I introduced Tracey to another foundation here in Central Florida, and they were kind enough to buy her a brand new one and paid the insurance for a year for a mere $32,000 grant, which was just great. So that's Tracey. Classic Tracey, in an interview with Brian Carlson, not Tucker, Brian Carlson, they asked her, what two animals would you put together? To which she replied, and this may sound familiar, a horse with butterfly wings. Tracey was into butterflies. Through the many years that followed, fundraising breakfast, thousands of puppet shows, COVID, and the need for a complete different approach to the program, Tracey met all of those challenges. Long before I retired the third time, or was it the fourth time, David? I can't recall, but somewhere around in there, and no longer have the bank to help, Penny, my wife, who's with me today, and we had been long supporters, personal supporters of Micheli Puppets and Tracey, and we just vowed to continue that. It's a little more difficult when you're out of the corporate world to find people to help, but somehow we manage to find people from time to time and introduce them to Tracey and her mission. The Galloway Foundation here in Winter Park was the foundation that bought her the new van. And, you know, one more time, Tracey takes the reins. And following that effort, I introduced her to the Galloway Foundation, and much like David and the Edith Bush Foundation, they saw what she was doing, and it fit their mold because they worked for children. That was the whole foundation's whole purpose, would deal with children. And at that point, they then gave her a matching grant every year for the breakfast, $40,000. So raise 40 and get 40 more. It's an easy mathematical process, you know, but that was how it worked, and that's what, again, Tracey took charge of that with her efforts to write grants. So Tracey, who was the CEO, the artist, the fundraiser, and always meeting new challenges with new approaches. That was the Tracey that I knew. God took Tracey, took her home. And I like to think it was his plan for Tracey to take her to work with the puppets in heaven for the children who preceded her. And that's what I think and where Tracey is today. Thank you very much.
How do you follow up with all that has been shared? I mentioned at the beginning, the cloud of witnesses, the puppets, you. There's a verse in Scripture that speaks of a cloud of witnesses with which we are all surrounded. It mentions the heroes of ancient times in Scripture, Noah, Abel, Abraham, Moses, and so forth. Their hardships and difficulties, but it continues, since we're surrounded by all of these witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, the sins that so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Now, we talked about Tracey, and we would do well to emulate many of the things that she did. We can't copy that. It'll take all of us to do that. You heard the story. But it is accomplished in the way that Tracey did, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despised the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Tracey had mentors. When 35 years ago, when she was just starting Micheli Puppets, it was a fledgling company. A number of individuals that were part of this congregation, Chuck and Doris Boehner, Dana and Bill Nutt, Donna and Frank Sheffield, Ann and David Job, people you may not know, Evelyn and Ken Jeffers, adopted her as part of their family and mentored her and encouraged her along that way, encouraged her faith. They met with her frequently and uplifted her. There's a verse that follows later in Scripture. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works may follow them. Tracey was an encouragement to me. And when I served as pastor here some 15 years ago, for a span of about 10 years, there were many projects we participated together in. And one of the things that we did was I wanted to do something special for Passover, Crucifixion weekend. And I had read that verse that mentions the three Marys that were around the cross. So I talked that over with her, and I said, is there a way that we could do this? And she talked with me about how that might be, helped me to shape 3 mini monologues, and she edited and polished them, then cast that with members of the congregation, and they presented that in a way that was far beyond my imagination. She had that creative ability, as you've heard. She also encouraged me in another way. I felt impressed to share the book of Philippians in a narrative style. And we talked about it, and I knew that I couldn't memorize that. That was not my gift. But I thought maybe if I divided it up, and Tracey was willing to take up part of that. Well, I started memorizing one verse, a second verse, and by the time I got to the third verse, I was forgetting the first. Tracey took her part. She memorized it. In fact, she memorized the whole book. I didn't get around to doing that until after I left here. But with that encouragement, she had memorized it, so I worked at it and worked at it. Don't have the giftedness that she did. But I had the privilege yesterday of presenting that here. And when I was visiting with her in the hospital about 5 weeks ago or so, I told her that I was going to be able to present it here at the Apopka Church. She smiled. There was little else that she could do. Smiled. She mouthed words of she was so glad. And I would love for her to have been here present yesterday, but I knew that she was encouraged by what was happening, and she was the spark plug. She served on the worship committee, as has been mentioned. She dreamed big and made Micheli Puppets what it is today. She inherited her creativity and spunk from her Heavenly Father. He was the one who had gifted her. But I need to tell you, Tracey would likely have been very embarrassed by the attention lavished on her today. She was not self-seeking. She would quietly retire after a large gathering to recharge. I discussed with Leonard the possibility that the reason she opted for puppeteering was that that way she didn't have to be the focus of attention. For as many accolades as you've heard today, there are many more that would be gladly echoed and added to beyond what we've heard. But Tracey does not need our endorsement to find approval or acceptance with God. Tracey was a person of faith. She believed in a God whose love embraces us before we know him. She didn't struggle to find acceptance with him. She lived in the warm embrace of his love, and what she did reflected his love for her. The creativity she expressed was an expression of the creativity of the original creator. Tracey was a person of trust. She trusted in a big and gracious God. This wasn't something, or I should say someone, she imagined or dreamed up out of her creativity. She found him in the anchor of the book, the scriptures, and she grew to trust him. She trusted the promises she found there. She trusted in you unless you gave her reason not to, and then she still worked with you to help you earn trust. Thus, she gave many opportunities to thrive, as you have heard expressed by many here. That was true in large part because God had given her opportunities to thrive. And Tracey was a person of hope. Because of the trust she had in God, she firmly held to the hope that those promises gave her. That isn't to say that she didn't face difficult and challenging times, but this hope was the anchor of her soul. It's what helped her to do Micheli Puppets. It's what helped her to live. This hope was tested when her dear friend Tracey Smith succumbed to cancer. Even then, she held to the hope of seeing Tracey again because God's word promised her it would be. And a favorite promise of hers is found in the letter of that Apostle Paul wrote to his friends in Thessalonica. I want to read it for you. Chapter 4, verses 13 and following. But I don't want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as those who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the very word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall ever be with the Lord. This was a favorite passage of Tracey's. She understood that her close friend Tracey Smith was resting until the resurrection, and that God would restore her in that day when he comes. Our Tracey did not expect to see this or to face this so soon for herself, and she, along with her, hoped and prayed for the recovery from her illness and injuries. But as one procedure after another didn't work, she realized it was her turn. She was such an exuberant person, a creative person. She did not want to die. There was much more to create, to serve, to do, to share, and time to spend with her beloved Leonard and with us. Now it comes to us to hope as she did, as she would want us to put our trust in the one who can restore what he has created to wholeness and to peace. And that next show will be on a cosmic stage. And if you thought Tracey was creative here, just wait. When Christ, HaMashiach, Isa, comes and wakens Tracey, oh my, she will have us all involved in a magnificent show of to honor the marvelous God she knew and lived for here, and we'll see face to face soon. And I want to tell you, I can't wait. Let's pray. Great God, the original creator, who bestowed upon our friend Tracey such creativity and fun and exuberance. Oh Lord, hold our hearts and our hands as we move forward, carrying forward what she started here on the mission that you entrusted to her. Help us lift people, care about children, bring joy and hope and exuberance until we see you face to face with her. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to mention that a special word of appreciation to the friends and family of Tracey, providing refreshments on the other side of the entrance, the narthex. Please feel free to go there. On the way, remember to sign one of the remembrance sheets there so that a record of your being here can be looked over and remembered by her family. Thank you so much for being here and remembering our friend, Tracey.
you.